Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. First item on the agenda, we have to address the mustache is gone. Why is the mustache gone? You might be asking yourself. Guys, I got tired of getting catcalled and getting harassed by women. I'm just being completely honest right now. It got tiring, okay? I was just too much of a sex symbol and it was time to go back to normal old Michi without the mustache. So I'm sorry guys, no more sex appeal in these videos. It's 100% gone, but again, I'd rather be safe. I'd rather be secure when I walk down the street than feel like I'm getting harassed by all these random people. But anyway, today we're going to be ranking legendary players' international careers, as you can tell by the title. I got this idea because obviously we just had the World Cup, we just had the Euros, and I want to talk about some guys in their international career. Again, this is just based off their international career. Just international. I am not talking anything about club football today. Capiche? I hope you guys understand that, because if I get one comment about club career, I'm actually going to jump off a bridge. I'm not even joking. I will actually jump off a bridge. Not a really tall one where I can still survive, but I will jump off a bridge. But anyway, man, yeah, today, this list is kind of weird. We have guys like Maradona and Messi and Ronaldo, and then we have Wayne Rooney. I don't know why I made this list this way, but anyway, it's going to be really, really fun. I just wanted to kind of have a bunch of different players on here. If you guys want to see another tier list with some other players, you can let me know what players you guys want to see in the comment section down below. But yeah, with this, the criteria for this video, for this tier list, we're mostly going to focus on the big international tournaments. I'm not really going to talk about friendlies much. I'm not going to talk about the Nations League. Obviously, for some of these guys, they didn't play in that. But, currently, like the guys who played there, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not really going to talk about qualifying either. We're mostly going to talk about, if you're from South America, the World Cup and the Copa America. And if you're from Europe, obviously, we're going to talk about the Euro and the World Cup. So, yeah, this video should be really, really fun. I hope you guys enjoy it. Whatever you guys agree or disagree with, please let me know in the comments section down below. And yeah, man, without further ado, let's start ranking some legendary players' international careers. First player we have here is Diego Armando Maradona, who to me, very clearly is gonna go into S tier. Maradona has one of the greatest international legacies in the history of football. This is a man who made 2 World Cup finals, who won a World Cup in '86, and you can argue had the greatest single World Cup campaign of all time. That World Cup in '86 by him was fucking amazing. What he did in the semifinal, what he did in the final, the game against England, obviously, that we all remember, the hand of God, and then the goal of the century. I mean, this guy was insane. Never won the Copa America, even though he participated in, I think, 2 of them. Never even made a Copa America final, funny enough. The best Copa America run he ever had was 1987, and they got knocked out in the semifinals by Uruguay in that game. But again, back then, big players didn't really take the Copa America too seriously like they do now. It was like more of a smaller tournament back in the day when Maradona was at his peak. So again, when you have a World Cup, bro, do I really give a fuck if you won the Copa America or not? I absolutely do not care. I mean, this guy, like I said, made 2 World Cup finals. In '90, he was really, really good as well. In '82, I mean, he was amazing. I think he got a red card in that World Cup, but he still scored. He has 8 goals overall at the World Cup. For Argentina overall, he has 32 goals and 26 assists. That's 58 GA, which is fucking insane. And yeah, Maradona, bro. Maradona, like I said, one of the greatest international legacies of all time. It's mostly not really carried, but like the bulk of it comes from that 1986 World Cup. But like I said, I mean, this guy arguably has the greatest single run in the history of the most important competition in not just international football, but in football overall. And when you have that kind of resume, you're going to be an S tier, obviously. And he carried most of those teams, man. I mean, those teams were good, but in '90 and in '86, he carried the majority of those teams. And yeah, to me, Maradona was a guy. I mean, obviously, Argentina had won a World Cup in '78 with Kempes. What would that be? 8 years before that. But he was really the one that put Argentina on the map when it came to international football. Now, obviously, Argentina had already had some great international players, like I said, Kempes and Di Stefano. But when Maradona really came into that team, that's when they started becoming this powerhouse and this dominant team in international football. And it's thanks to him that Argentina are the team that are the national team that they are now, in my opinion. So because of that, man, when you have one of the greatest legacies in the history of one of the greatest teams, national teams, sorry, in the history of football. How many times have I said history in this fucking clip, bro? It must have been like 15 times. But anyway, I'm trying to make a point here. Maradona is going to go into S tier. No debate about it. Next up, we have El Fenomeno, R9, Ronaldo Nazario, who to me is going to go right next to Maradona into S tier. Look at the contrast of these 2 haircuts, by the way. Fucking crazy, isn't it? But anyway, Nazario, he's one of the greatest players in the history of football. And obviously for Brazil, he's one of their biggest icons. And if you're one of the biggest icons for Brazil, you're obviously in good shape, because that's the best national team of all time. Nazario for Brazil had 62 goals and 32 assists in 98 appearances. That's 94 GA in 98 appearances. He almost averaged a goal or an assist per game for Brazil. There's also a guy who won 2 Copa Americas in '97 in Bolivia and in '99 99 in Paraguay and was arguably, not arguably, 97 he was the best player. 99 it was between him and Rivaldo, but he was amazing in the two Copa Americas that he won. He obviously won a World Cup as a two-time finalist because he wasn't really on the team in 94 when they lost to Italy. But in 98, he was arguably the player of the tournament. In 02, he should have won player of the tournament. They gave that shit to fucking Oliver Kahn for some reason. Actually, no, I think in 98 he won player of the tournament. In 02, he didn't win it. They gave it to Oliver Kahn. But we know Nazario proved them wrong in that final when he scored a brace past Oliver Kahn in Germany. And yeah, bro, this guy has 15 World Cup goals, the second most all time. For a guy, like, here's the thing with Nazario, bro. Most of the guys here, their legacies were made at the club level. R9's legacy was made at the international level. That's just the fact of the matter. R9's biggest legacies, like his legacy for real, is for Brazil. This is a guy who never won a Champions League in his career. That's unheard of for a guy of this quality. Nazario won 2 Ballon d'Ors, and most of them were because of what he did at the international level. In 02, he won it because of what he did at the World Cup. So for me, again, when like his legacy comes from Brazil. Obviously, he was amazing at the club level. This guy for Inter was a fucking machine. For PSV was a machine. Was even good when he played for the Galacticos. Wasn't obviously peak R9, but he was still decent. For Barca, he was really, really good. Obviously, we know R9 is arguably the greatest striker of all time and one of the best players of all time. But his legacy really comes from the national team, like I said, and what he did for Brazil. And yeah, for me, bro, when you have 15 World Cup goals, when you've won 2 Copa Americas, and you were the best player on both of those teams, when you've made 2 World Cup finals, I mean, this guy was as unplayable as any player in the history of football when it came to the international stage, when it came to football in general, but really internationally. I mean, this guy put fear in every single opposing team's eyes because, again, it was like this fucking haircut. I mean, this haircut, bro, it's so iconic. This haircut is so iconic. And like I said, for me, Nazario, no question about it, is for sure going to find himself in S tier. Next up, we have Thomas Muller. Thomas Muller was by far the hardest player to rank in this video. I don't know where to put him. It's between A and B. And for me, bro, I'm going to have to put him into B. I'm sorry. Thomas Muller's going to go into B for me. Now, Thomas Muller's World Cup legacy is ridiculous. This guy won Young Player of the Tournament at the 2010 World Cup, and he was fucking amazing in that World Cup. In 2014, you could argue he could have won Player of the Tournament. It was between him, James, Messi. They all had a case to win it. Obviously, Messi ended up taking home the award, but he had an argument to win that award as well. And obviously, this is a guy who won the World Cup in 2014 and was arguably Germany's best player in that run. Now, Germany, it's weird because they had such a collective, like their team was such a collective effort that it's hard to give credit to one player, but he was obviously arguably the best player on that team and for sure one of the top 3 best players on that team. This is a guy who I think he's top 10 in goals. I know he's top 10 in goals for Germany. He's top 3 in appearances for the German national team, and obviously the German national team is one of the greatest national teams in the history of football. However, bro, this guy, like, I can't put him on A tier, and I definitely can't he doesn't belong on S tier with R9 or Maradona, not even close. I never thought about putting him into S tier. I thought about putting him into A because obviously, like I said, winning Young Player of the Tournament at the 2020 World Cup and being great there, and winning obviously a World Cup in 2014. But I don't really think of Thomas, when I think of Thomas Muller, he has obviously a great international legacy, but does he really have those defining moments when it comes to the international stage? And in my opinion, he really doesn't. At the Euro, he's been underwhelming. I mean, Germany at the Euro over the past 30 years have been really underwhelming. I mean, this is a team who hasn't made a Euro final for ages. Obviously, Thomas Muller at the Euro doesn't really have that great of a record. In 2012, I don't even think he scored a goal. In 2016, wasn't great for that team. So for me, again, when it comes to the World Cup, obviously winning it is great, but again, like I said, that Germany team was more of a collective effort. And at the Euro, he doesn't really have that type of legacy to put him anywhere, to put him on A tier. Again, this might be controversial. I'm sure people are going to disagree in the comment section. And let me know if you disagree down below. Let me know why you think Thomas Muller belongs higher or lower on this list. I don't think anybody's going to argue he belongs lower on this list, but a lot of people might argue, especially Bayern fans or Germany fans, that he belongs higher. But for me, again, like I said, when I look at an international legacy, it really comes down to those defining moments. And I really don't believe Thomas Muller has enough of those to put him in one of the top 2 categories. Again, I could be wrong, but I'd love to hear in the comment section down below. But yeah, for me, Thomas Muller, despite being one of the best players in Germany's history, is going to find himself in B tier for me. Next up, we have the Dutchman, Johan Cruyff, who to me is going to find himself in C tier. Johan Cruyff for the Dutch national team had 33 goals and 30 assists in his career in 48 appearances. 66 GA in 48 appearances is absurd. That goal and assist per game ratio is as crazy as you will see in international football. But unfortunately for Johan Cruyff, man, the only reason why he's going in C tier and why I can't put him higher is because this guy just didn't play enough international football. Between the World Cup and the Euros combined, Johan Cruyff played 8 games. 8 games at the Euro and the World Cup. He only ever played in 1 Euro game, by the way. Only ever played in 1 Euro game. That is a true stat. You can look it up. And he obviously played 7 games of the World Cup and he only participated in 1 World Cup in 1974 because Johan Cruyff had a lot of issues with his Dutch teammates. They didn't really get along that well. I think it was like 2 of them that he didn't really get along with that much. And obviously 1978, we know, I think he got threatened or something by his family. Like his family got threatened, so he couldn't travel to Argentina. Anyway, Johan Cruyff, what you need to know is that he only ever played in 1 World Cup. Now, for Johan Cruyff, what's unfortunate for us football fans is that in that World Cup that he played in 1974, he was arguably, him and Gerd Müller, the best player at that tournament. In 1974, Johan Cruyff had 3 goals and 7 assists at the World Cup, and he assisted, and he scored or assisted, in the Dutch's last 5 games. And that Dutch team made it to the final. Obviously, that was that Dutch team that had that golden generation because Ajax, that was when Ajax was winning the UCL, like 3 straight, and obviously, like, they had a great team. But Johan Cruyff was, no doubt about it, the best player on that team. But again, the sample size is just not there. I can't put you any higher than I definitely can't put you with Thomas Muller when he's won a World Cup, and he obviously is one of the top World Cup goal scorers of all time. And Johan Cruyff, having participated in 1 World Cup again, he made the final. He was fucking amazing in that tournament. But I think, look, if you would have played in the 1978 World Cup, I think we're sitting here talking about maybe the Dutch having a World Cup for the like having the first World Cup, in their history, because they made the final in that tournament, and Johan Cruyff didn't play. And in 1974, they lost to a really, really good West Germany team, obviously, with Gerd Müller and Franz Beckenbauer. But to me, they actually lost to the host nation twice. That's crazy. They lost in 74 to the host nation and then 78 to the host nation. The Dutch just have the worst luck when it comes to, obviously, the World Cup. They made 3 finals and never won a single one. But yeah, to me, Johan Cruyff, the reason why he's going into sea is because he just didn't play enough. This is a guy that when it comes to club football has as decorated a legacy as any player ever. But when it comes to the international stage, again, because he didn't really participate that much for the Dutch, he just can't find himself higher than that. But again, it's unfortunate this guy didn't play enough for the Netherlands, because if he did, I think we could be sitting here talking about one of the greatest international legacies in the history of football. Next up is Platini, who to me is gonna find himself in A tier. Platini has one of the most underrated international legacies of all time. Now, this guy never won a World Cup. He had 5 goals and 3 assists at the FIFA World Cup, but he did win a Euro. He only ever qualified for 1 Euro, by the way, in his career, because back then when Platini played, the Euro only consisted of 8 teams, so it was a lot harder to qualify in those times. But in the 1 Euro that he played, he had 9 goals and 1 assist. That should tell you how good he was. And France won the whole thing. That was their first Euro, their first major trophy in their history by France. And it was won thanks to Michel Platini. And I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I really believe this. And you can go back and research this tournament if you want. And you can go back and look at the clips on YouTube and look at the Wikipedia of that tournament and look at the Wikipedia of Michel Platini. I promise you, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm not blowing anything up your ass because that'd be kind of gross. But Michel Platini, and you guys know how much I love Messi. We're going to talk about Messi in this video. And I waxed poetic about Maradona in 86 and R9 in 02 and 98. I could really make the argument that 1984, Michel Platini in that Euro had the greatest tournament run by any player in football history. He was that good. He carried that French team to win that tournament. Now again, is the Euro as important as the World Cup? No, and that's why I'm not putting him in S tier. But that is a pretty important trophy in my opinion. When you have that great of a Euro campaign, I mean, to me, you deserve to be in A tier. And again, this guy really brought France back to relevancy. France were an irrelevant national team in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s. Like for the most, like France became a powerhouse. Like they really became a relevant team in international football once Platini came into that team. So for me, when I look at that, because they qualified, they made the World Cup in 82, and I think they lost in the semifinals, made the World Cup in 86. I mean, while Platini was there, they were qualifying for the World Cup. So, I mean, again, to me, and he has a pretty good record when it comes to the World Cup, 5 goals and 3 assists. And those French teams weren't really anything to write home about, obviously, back in the day. Has 41 goals and 17 assists overall for that French national team. That's 58 G, obviously, which is a pretty good record. So, for me, again, Platini, when it comes to that 1 Euro run, which I could argue, again, like I said, is the best tournament run a player's ever had in international football, that to me is good enough to put him into A tier. And again, like I said, he's not an underrated player because everybody knows how good Platini is, one of the greatest players of all time, a multiple-time Ballon d'Or winner. But I don't think people really recognize how good of an international legacy he had. And obviously, I'm here to tell you guys how good it was. That's my job in this channel, to kind of not educate you, but to inform you when it comes to guys you guys may not know about. And yeah, I'm telling you guys, go back and watch some of his clips in 1984 in that Euro. The guy was fucking amazing. Scored a hat trick in that Euro run. I mean, the guy was insane. So for me, because of that, he's gonna find himself in A tier. Next up, we have Lionel Messi, who to me is obviously gonna go into S tier. No debate about that. He's gonna go at the top of S tier because Lionel Messi, and you can argue with your mom, because I promise you, she cares way more than me, has the greatest international legacy in the history of football. If I would have made this video back in 2020, he would be in C tier. But at present day, today, 2024, no one comes close to Lionel Messi's international legacy and his longevity at the international stage. Obviously, we know behind Ronaldo, the second most goals in international football with 109. And more than that, bro, this is a guy who's made 7 finals at the international level. 07 Copa America, 2015 Copa America, 2016 Copa America, 2021 Copa America, 2024 Copa America, 2022 World Cup, 2014 World Cup. That is 7 finals at the international stage. And by the way, in those 7, he's won 4 player of the tournaments. A phenom, bro. This guy is insane. Obviously, like I said, made the World Cup final in 2014, won player of the tournament in 2014, was amazing in the group stages, was really good in the knockout rounds as well. And then obviously we know his crowning achievement is 2022 in that World Cup in Qatar and what he did, which to me is the single greatest World Cup run a player has ever had. Respect to Maradona in '86, I talked about him already. Respect to R9, respect to the other players here who had great World Cup runs. 2022 Messi, people talk about the penalties. Obviously, you didn't watch him play, because if you actually watch this guy play at the 2022 World Cup, you know he was on a different planet to everybody else. Every other player on that tournament was not on the same level as Lionel Messi, and he proved why, you know, he is the greatest player of all time and why he, to me, has the greatest international legacy of all time at that tournament. I mean, what he did in those knockout rounds against Australia, I mean, insane. Against the Netherlands, insane. Against Croatia, fantastic. Scoring a brace in the final of the World Cup. I mean, this guy is just like the words can't describe how good Messi is. Obviously, overall, but at the international level to me. And yeah, for me, no debate about it, man. When you have the second most goals in the history of international football, when you have the most player of the tournaments in the history of international football, when you're the third top goal scorer in the history of the World Cup with 14 goals, I'm pretty sure 13 goals actually, I should say, for Messi. I mean, how can we even debate him being any lower than S tier? How can we even debate him not being at the top of S tier? Because, like I said, Lionel Messi has the greatest international legacy of all time. Again, you can argue with your mom. Like I said, she definitely, I swear to God, she cares more than me. But yeah, Messi's going to go into S tier. No question about it. Next up is Pelé, who to me is obviously going to find himself in S tier. Pelé, you could argue, I think a lot of people would argue actually, has the greatest international legacy of all time. But like I said, I think it's Messi. But I think 90% or maybe, I think less, 80% of football fans would say it's Pelé because it's mostly nostalgia bias. But Pelé does have one of the greatest, if not the greatest international legacy of all time. This is a man who's won 3 World Cups. Obviously, he's a man who has the second most goals in the history of Brazil. But his goal per game ratio for Brazil is fucking insane. He has 12 goals and 9 assists in 14 appearances at the FIFA World Cup. He scored 3 goals in World Cup finals, which is fucking crazy. Obviously, he scored a goal in 1970, scored 2 goals in 1958, as a teenager, as a 17-year-old, scoring in a World Cup final, scoring a hat-trick in a World Cup semifinal. Obviously, we know Pelé's World Cup legacy is insane. Like Maradona, Pelé never won the Copa America. He actually, like Maradona as well, never made the final even. Both of these guys didn't make the final. But like I mentioned when I talked about Maradona, back in those times, people didn't really care that much about the Copa America. And again, when you have the World Cup legacy that Pelé has, I think obviously, like, who cares? Who gives a fuck what he did at the Copa America? I think Pelé's World Cup legacy is a little bit overrated because you can honestly argue that in all those World Cups that he won, he was never really the best player for Brazil. He was not the best player in 1958. He was not the best player in 1962. And by the way, in 1962, he got hurt in that World Cup. I don't even think he missed the last, like, I think 4 games. And Garrincha was the best player on that team. Now, in 1966, he obviously missed the whole tournament as well. And obviously, Brazil didn't win that tournament. But in 1970, I would say he was the best player in that World Cup, at that World Cup. And, you know, that Brazil team is arguably the greatest national team of all time. But their leader was Pelé. And he was a fantastic in the tournament. But like I said, I think most people just look at Pelé. 3 World Cups. Oh, he's the greatest of all time. But they don't really look at the context and how he, like, what he did at those World Cups. Now, obviously, like I said, Pelé was fantastic at the FIFA World Cup. But those Brazil teams are some of the greatest teams of all time. I mean, they won the tournament in 1962 without Pelé. Like I said, because Garrincha was that good. So these teams, like I said, they were stacked. There was a reason why they won so many tournaments in that time. But again, for me, like I said, I think Pelé, when you look at what he did in 1958, obviously amazing. To me, his best World Cup was 1970 when he was a little bit older. But yeah, to me, Pelé, like I said, I think his international legacy can be a little bit overrated by some people. But don't mistake that for me saying that he's an overrated international player, because I don't believe that whatsoever. I think he's obviously an amazing player at the international stage, at any stage. I mean, Pelé, when it came to club football, was amazing as well. Obviously for Santos, never played in Europe. But anyway, yeah, to me, Pelé, like I said, is going to go into S tier. This is an order, by the way, from left to right. This is how I would rank it. Again, I'm not trying to be biased here because obviously, as you guys know, I'm not from Argentina. And I'm not really too fond of the way that that country kind of expresses their feelings towards other players in other countries, if that makes sense, with this whole Enzo Fernandez situation. And I've seen that for years with Argentina. So again, I'm not trying to sit here and be an Argentina homer because, again, I have no ties to this team. But for me, if I have to look at it as an objective football fan, this is the ranking, this is the order that I would have it in. But again, you can feel free to disagree. But yeah, for me, Pelé, for everything that I just laid out, is going to go into S tier. Next up, we have Kylian Mbappe, who to me is going to find himself in A tier. And actually, I'm going to make an executive decision midway through this video and move Michel Platini back to B tier, down to B tier, sorry. I think having Muller at B tier when he's won a World Cup and is one of the greatest World Cup players of all time, and having Platini in A tier is a little bit, it's not a good look. And again, I think what he did in the 1984 Euro was amazing. Like I said, one of the best tournament runs, if not the best tournament run a player's ever had. But again, the Euro ain't the World Cup. I'm sorry, it's just not the World Cup. So for that reason, I'm sorry, Platini, my tocayo, I'm going to have to move you back down, or not back down because he was never there, but I'm going to have to move you down to B tier. But anyway, enough about Platini. Let's talk about Kylian Mbappe, who I honestly debated putting into S tier. But when I look at the legends here, I just can't put him into that category just yet because he's still so young. But no question about it, bro. Kylian Mbappe, when his career is all said and done, is going to be an S tier. He's going to end up as the top goal scorer for France because he's already third. I mean, he's just going to have the most goals in the history of the national team. He's already won a World Cup. He's already made another World Cup final. He already has 4 goals in World Cup finals. Kylian Mbappe has the most goals in the history of the World Cup final. Think about that for a second. He's only played in 2 World Cups. He's never made a World Cup and not made a final. The guy is a phenom, bro. I think he's tied 4th for most goals in the World Cup. I mean, this guy is insane. He's insane. He obviously bursted onto the scene at the World Cup when he was a teenager in 2018 in Russia. And like I said, scored in that final, scored a banger in that final, scored a hat-trick in the final against Argentina, almost single-handedly brought them back in that game. When it comes to the World Cup, very few players can compare to Kylian Mbappe. Unfortunately for him, though, when it comes to the Euros, which again, I don't value as highly as the World Cup, not even close, but it's still an important tournament, he just hasn't been as good. It's weird, bro. I don't know why Mbappe is not as good at the Euros as he is at the World Cup. At the Euros, he's been disappointing, bro. In 2020, he was decent, but obviously missed his penalty against Switzerland, which ended up knocking them out in the round of 16. A very disappointing tournament for France. And this year, I know he broke his nose. He was very bad. He was terrible, honestly. He was just not good for France. When I'm holding him to Kylian Mbappe's standards, which I believe Kylian Mbappe is the best player in the world, and he didn't play like the best player in the world, not even close at this Euro. But again, at the World Cup, I mean, very few players are as good as this guy. Like I said, in the next few years, he's for sure going to find himself into S tier because his legacy when it comes to France is amazing. But again, right now, I just can't quite put him there because he's still so young. But if I make this, hopefully I'll still have a YouTube channel in like 6 years in 2031 or 2030. And if I make this tier list again, you better believe Mbappe will be an S tier. I promise you that. Next up, we have Neymar. Bro. Neymar. What do we do with Neymar? I love this guy, bro. One of my favorite players of all time. Top 3 favorite players of all time. It goes Messi, Neymar, and Salomon Rondon. I can put him in C tier. I can put him in B tier. I can put him in A tier. I can put him anywhere below S tier, honestly. You can put Neymar in any of those categories. Does he belong in the same tier as Cruyff? Cruyff made a World Cup final. Neymar never made a World Cup final. Does he belong in the same tier as Muller or Platini? Platini, obviously, like I said, won the Euro. Neymar never won the Copa America. Thomas Muller won a World Cup. Should I put him in the same tier as Mbappe, who's won a World Cup and made another final? I don't know. I'm going to put Neymar in C tier, bro, unfortunately. I just can't put him any higher than that. It pains me to say, but look, I think Neymar, when it comes to international legacy, I think people are too harsh when talking about Neymar because this guy is the reason why Brazil have honestly been relevant for the past couple years. Now, granted, I'll give you guys this. Brazil won the 2019 Copa America and Neymar was not a part of that team. So obviously they can win without Neymar. But this guy, let's not forget, guys, he's the top goal scorer in the history of Brazil. The greatest national team of all time, their top goal scorer is Neymar. That's just a matter of fact. I'm not making that up. He's one of the top goal scorers. He's top 10 in the history of international football when it comes to goals scored. But again, like I said, at major tournaments, it just hasn't been there. 2011 Copa America, when he first bursted onto the scene, was decent as a young player, but obviously Brazil couldn't win that. That ended up going to Uruguay. 2014 World Cup, he was decent. He was really good actually in that World Cup, but then obviously he got kneed in the back and almost lost his career because of that and couldn't end up playing the whole rest of that tournament. And we know what happened. The rest is history with Brazil. 2018 World Cup. Man, they lost. He was good, but they lost to Belgium. 2022 World Cup, he was obviously was injured, but he was amazing in the games that he played. But obviously ended up losing in heartbreaking fashion to Croatia. It just hasn't been there for Neymar at the international level, bro. It just has not been there for Neymar, and it's unfortunate, man, because this guy is one of the greatest players of all time, in my opinion. But at the international stage, it just hasn't. Those Brazil, look, I gotta say this. Pele and R9 had some of the greatest Brazil generations of all time. Neymar has not been blessed with some great Brazilian generation. That's just a matter of fact. He has not been blessed with some great Brazilian generation. It's just like his teams have not been as good. But again, when you're the best player on a team, you should be able to get a team at least to a final. And again, when a team wins a trophy without you there, like they did in 2019 Copa America, it is a bad look. So for that reason, I'm going to put Neymar into C tier. Man, it pains me to do it, but it's got to be done. I'm sorry. Next up, we have Wayne Rooney, who I honestly don't know how he made it onto this tier list, but I added him in here. I don't know why, like I said, but we're going to talk about him because he's here. To me, he's going to go into C tier. Wayne Rooney has 51 goals and 21 assists. That's 74 GA for England. He's the second. He had, like, obviously Harry Kane surpassed him, but he has the second most goals in the history of the English national team. He's the second most cap player behind Peter Shilton, who's a keeper in the history of the English national team. So obviously for England, he's an English icon, but Wayne Rooney's international legacy, for the level of player that he was and the amount of things that he won at the club level, is embarrassing, honestly. And this guy, apart from Euro 2004, never really showed up at any tournament. Wayne Rooney's major tournaments are as disappointing as any great player you will find. The guy was terrible, bro. I mean, I remember him being in the World Cup in 2014. He was awful. The World Cup in 2016, why Roy Hodgson called this guy up and started him on that team, I honestly never know. The World Cup in 2010, I mean, England as a whole kind of disappointed, but still, Wayne Rooney wasn't great. Euro 2012, not great. Euro 08 didn't even qualify. So for me, look, when I look at Wayne Rooney, look, you can say that about the English national team as a whole, because they obviously have underachieved throughout their history, and obviously Wayne Rooney is not the only reason why they did that. That whole team was just like it was full of great players who just couldn't perform at the international level and didn't really mesh together. But again, Wayne Rooney, we're talking about him now. We're not talking about Lampard or Gerrard or Scholes or Ferdinand or Terry. We're talking about Wayne Rooney. And for a guy who was England's best player, arguably throughout all those years, because Wayne Rooney, let's not forget, in his prime, was one of the 10 best players in the world. That's just a matter of fact. This guy was that unplayable when he was at United from like 05 to like 2011. Guy was that good. He was that good. And for, like I said, at international tournaments, besides Euro 04, never really showed up. Just failed to show up at almost every single international tournament, or not every, like he didn't almost, he just failed to show up at every single international tournament. So for that reason, I'm sorry, what do they call him, Waza? Yeah, I'm sorry, Waza. You're going to find yourself in C tier, and it's really, you're the worst here by far, I'm going to be honest with you. Next up, we have Zinedine Zidane, who to me is going to find himself in S tier. Zidane, like R9, to me, you could argue most of his legacy, most of his lore, comes from international football. Obviously, Zidane was amazing at the club level for Juventus and was amazing for Real Madrid, won a Ballon d'Or. But when people talk about Zidane, what do they mostly talk about? The 1998 World Cup, the 2006 World Cup. So like I said, most of his lore to me comes from international football, and rightfully so, because this guy for France was a fucking machine, bro. Like I said, this is a guy who won a World Cup in 98, made another final in 06, won a Euro in 2000 after beating Italy by that golden goal from Trezeguet. I mean, this guy's international trophy cabinet is as good as any player in history. At the World Cup, he doesn't really have these gaudy goal and assist numbers at the World Cup or at the Euro. But again, Zidane wasn't really a GA type of player. He was mostly, like, he was a guy who you have to watch him play to really know how effective he was. And again, he had 5 goals. I think historically, like in the World Cup, he had 5 goals and 3 assists, which obviously isn't bad, but it's not great compared to some of the other guys here. But again, like I said, Zidane is a guy who he wasn't really a guy who you could judge based off GA, if that makes sense. But yeah, man, this guy in the 1998 World Cup scored 2 goals in that final. In 06, that to me was his best World Cup run. Obviously was amazing. That World Cup run gets tainted because of what happened in the final when he headbutted Materazzi, which kind of tainted his whole career, actually, getting sent off in that final game. But he was amazing. Obviously, we all know the iconic performance against Brazil in 06, where he basically played that team around the park, and that team had some of the best legends of all time. But yeah, to me, again, like I said, not really too much to say about Zidane because his international trophy cabinet and his legacy speaks for itself. And for me, obviously, he's going to go into S tier. And lastly, we have Cristiano Ronaldo. I saved the best for last. I'm sorry, Ronaldo fans. He's going to go into B tier. You cannot make an argument that Ronaldo belongs anywhere in A or S tier. I'm sorry, you just can't make that argument. You just can't make that argument at all. Now, Ronaldo is the top international goal scorer of all time with 130 goals. He's won a Euro. He's never won a World Cup. He's been great at the Euro. He has 14 goals at the Euro, which is obviously fucking insane. I thought he had less than that, but 14 goals at the Euro is crazy. But the 1 Euro that he won was probably his worst, apart from this year, was probably his worst outing at a Euro. To me, Ronaldo's best Euro was either 2012 or 2020. I would say 2020, even though 2012 is close. But, bro, 2016 when he won that Euro, I mean, it just doesn't move me, bro. Portugal went through as a third-place team, and he was really subpar for most of those games. He just wasn't great. And again, that team won the final without him. Kind of like Brazil won the Copa America without Neymar. Portugal won that final against France with Ronaldo on the bench. So again, the Euro is a great trophy, and the goals scored at the international stage is amazing. And obviously, bringing Portugal to relevancy is amazing because obviously most people follow Portugal and know Portugal because of Ronaldo. Now, Eusebio and Figo and Rui Costa had some great players. I reject the idea entirely that Portugal was only great players Ronaldo, and that before that they had a bunch of bums. Portugal is a historic footballing nation with some of the greatest players, like not some of the greatest players, but with a lot of all-time great players. Like it's not just Ronaldo. Now, obviously, he to me is the second greatest player of all time, so I hold him to a higher standard than those guys. And when it comes to me holding him to that standard, again, like I said, it just doesn't move me, bro. €1, it doesn't move me because at the World Cup, when it comes to that's when legends are made, right? At the World Cup is when the big boys really show up. And at the World Cup, he's been disappointing, man. 0 World Cup knockout stage goals for a guy who's supposed to be Mr. Clutch, who his whole thing is, I come through when my team needs me most. It just doesn't move me, man, at all. It doesn't move me at all. He was disappointing in 2010. He was awful in 2014. Just absolutely fucking putrid. Did not even get out of the group. He was good in 2018 because he scored that hat-trick against Spain, but if it wasn't for that hat-trick, he was not good. He was bad in 2022 when he got benched. He was bad at this year, but obviously we're talking about the World Cup. When it comes to the World Cup, bro, I'm sorry, bro. Bro. When it comes to the World Cup, I'm holding him to the standard of second greatest player of all time, and some people think he's the greatest player of all time. And you cannot have that resume when it comes to the biggest tournament in football and expect me to put you any higher than B tier. It just, like, he doesn't belong in S tier with those guys. Not even fucking close. He doesn't even belong in A tier with Mbappe. Mbappe's a guy who's shown up at the World Cup. And you can say whatever you want about Mbappe's teammates. He's obviously had better teams. But then again, you're supposed to be that guy who comes through. I mean, you can't tell me that you can't score 1 goal. 1 goal in the knockout rounds of the World Cup. That's all we're asking for. 1 goal or even get an assist, bro. You can't even get that done. Again, at the Euros, he's been good, but he doesn't have this overwhelming Euro legacy for me to put him in A tier. He's won 1 Euro, and it was not a Mickey Mouse run because it's disrespectful to say, but let's just say he wasn't that great. He was Portugal's best player, obviously, but he wasn't like, oh my God, Ronaldo, did you see the Euro that he had in 2016? This guy was unplayable. So for me, again, like I said, I know Real fans are going to get mad at me for that. But I really honestly could give a fuck. This doesn't really, it's my opinion. So if you disagree, then talk to your mom, have her call me, because I promise you I'll have her number, and I'll answer right away. Cringy ass joke. I've already made too many mom jokes, so that's enough of that. But yeah, man, I'm sorry, Ronaldo fans, even though I'm not really sorry. He's just going to go into B tier for me because the international legacy, when it comes to me holding him to that standard, like I said, it's just not there. And that, guys, is the end of the video. The final rankings: Messi, Maradona, Pelé, R9, and Zidane find themselves in S tier. Kylian Mbappe is all alone in A tier. Then we have B tier that consists of Thomas Muller, Michel Platini, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And then we have C tier that consists of Wayne Rooney, Neymar, and Johan Cruyff. Whatever you guys agree or disagree with, please let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love every single one of you, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.